is Madison Moon, and I'm back with another book video. Tonight's video is going to be my summer reads, so everything I read over summer 2022. I read a decent amount of books, as usual. Some I loved, some that were okay, and I think there's just one that I just did not like, if I recall correctly. But yeah, I'm just going to talk about them and review them and kind of summarize them for you. So let's get started. The first one I have talked about recently in two other book videos, I think. Yeah, because it was in my mid-year book tag video, and then I also had it in my embossing video recently, but I figured I would talk about it a little bit more in detail. It is Kristin Hanna's The Great Alone, and this book was so good. It made me cry so hard, and I mentioned this in my last video. I have another book from her called The Nightingale, and I'm gonna read that soon. I just haven't got around to it yet. But this book was so good that it makes me want to read anything she's ever written. And I know some of you have said that she's your favorite author, and that makes sense because she's such a good writer. The way that she writes is so unique and detailed, and she really captures very unique emotions that I think a lot of people don't write about. And she has a way of writing that's just really detailed, and you really feel like you're there, but not overly detailed, but you're like, this is unnecessarily detailed, if you know what I mean. And it's just so good. So this book is about a family in the 70s who picks up, I think they live in Washington, I think Seattle, and they pack up and move to remote Alaska, so in the bush. And it's a tiny little town where everybody knows each other and everybody helps each other out and prepares for winter and stuff. And the father is a Vietnam veteran, and like I said, this is during the 70s, and I'm just gonna say he's not quite right, as a lot of soldiers, unfortunately, didn't get proper treatment. And I think I said this too in my last video, that PTSD I don't think was even recognized as a thing until like the 80s, maybe. So I think, as most people know, Vietnam veterans were just not treated well, did not get the care that they needed. And so it kind of dives into life after the war with him and his family, and it's him and his wife and their daughter. And it's mostly from the point of view of the daughter, I think. I'm trying to remember if it's even really from her point of view. She's the main character. But anyways, it's so good. Not only is the adventure in Alaska a very cool story, but it's a very tumultuous story, and I will say there is some spousal abuse, so trigger warning on that. It's such a good book. Like I said, I was sobbing at the end. It's so good, and I'm scared I'm not gonna like it. That's the reason why I haven't really quite started reading the other book yet at first, because I'm scared that it's not gonna be as good as this one, because this one was so good. And even just how they describe survival and everything is just I don't know. And it just, the book grows up with the main character, and it's so good. It's so good. I can't recommend this book enough. It is fiction. It's incredible. This is a book I wish I could read again for the first time. So it's very good. Okay. Next is a book that I think I also briefly mentioned in my mid-year book freak out tag video. Is this book. I did not finish finish this book, so I'm not going to talk about it too much. I think I read like a third of it. It's pretty big. It is To Paradise by Hanya, Yanagihara. I should learn how to pronounce authors' names before I make these videos. She wrote A Little Life, and I also DNF'd that one. I just do not like her writing style. It's not for me. I think her characters are extremely unlikable, and I just don't care for her stories, and she writes in a way that's sad, and it seems like she's writing sad stuff just for the purpose of being sad. It's not for character development. It's not for any purpose other than to be the most, like, just shock value, I think. And she's not even a bad writer. I think it's just not for me. So I tried, but I will mark my words, I will never try to read another one of her books again, because I just don't like her writing style. So after trying to read two, I can't get into it. I just can't do it. I bought this one used too, and it came signed, which is interesting. And I really thought I was gonna like this one. Basically, it's about America, but in 3 different timelines. So it has like 3 books in one. And I only finished the first story. The first story was about a version of America, and I think it's in the 1800s, where gay marriage is legal, but they're still racist against black people. So I don't know where she was going with that. I don't know why she just didn't make it like more free for everyone, but I don't know. Gay marriages and like homosexual relationships are fine, and I mean that's cool, but I don't know. Like I said, the characters that she wrote were extremely unlikable, so I tried. I can't do it, guys, so just not for me. Okay, next, I finally read this other book by Danielle Evans, which is Before You Suffocate Your Own Full Self, and I ranted and raved about how good The Office of Historical Corrections was by her. She is another new author to me that is absolutely amazing. Another one where the way that she describes stuff is so unique and makes you truly feel like you're there and you're experiencing those emotions. And that's how I feel about Kristin and Anna too. So Danielle Evans she has 2 books. So it's Before You Suffocate Your Own Full Self and The Office of Historical Corrections. And both of them are a series of short stories. And they primarily have to do with stories of black people in America. And it kind of spans over different decades and stuff and different times. But a lot of it is about very like subtle things that happen to black people in America that are very unique to them and their experiences. And I just was blown away by her writing style, by the stories themselves. They were so interesting, and I will say they're not happy stories, and that's probably not surprising, but they're so good. This one I didn't like as much as The Office of Historical Corrections. However, I still really liked it. I just loved The Office of Historical Corrections, which I think this was her first book, and the Historical Corrections was her second book. But anyways, they're both amazing. She's such a talented writer, and the stories that she is telling, even though they're fiction, are so important. And I've said this before, but as a white person, there's only so much that I can truly empathize with, right? And her books tell stories in a way that makes you feel the impact to the most that you can as a white person, if that makes sense. She's just so good, so good. So I will forever read anything that she writes because she is so unbelievably talented. So I'm very much looking forward to whenever her next book comes out. say though, none of her stories are uplifting in any way. So, but they're so good. I highly, highly recommend. But if I had to recommend one, I would recommend read The Office of Historical Corrections first. It was kind of nice too because I could read like one story a night, which is kind of nice. It has a clear beginning and end, so I didn't have to like pick up and be like, okay, where was I in the story? And they're pretty short, but the font is pretty small, so it will take you like a little bit to get through it. Okay, next is a nonfiction book that I read that I really, really liked. This is Atomic Habits by James Clear, and an easy and proven way to build good habits and break bad ones. I have lots of bookmarks, and this book is a very approachable book about habits, how we form them, why we have them, subconscious, conscious habits, building good habits and breaking bad habits. And there are some good habits that I'd like to build, but there's a bad habit that I have that's particularly bad. I pick at my skin really bad, and I chew around like my cuticles too. And sorry if that's TMI, but I really wanted to break that habit, so I was hoping I could learn how to do that from this book. And something that really stuck out to me in this book that is helping me is that when you have a bad habit, you have to make it unattractive and make it difficult to do. So I thought, well, what if I wear gloves during times when I'm picking, and I've noticed that I pick and chew. And it's, when I'm talking about picking, I'll pick it like my face and stuff, any acne, anything at all, I'll pick it to death. And it's so bad. And you know, I will say, it is an anxious habit. But I do it mostly when when my hands aren't busy, so I'll do it all the time when I'm reading. So when I'm reading now, I now wear gloves while I'm reading, so that I literally cannot pick. And they're like these cotton gloves that I got off Amazon, and they have little touch screen fingertips, so that I like don't have an excuse to take them off and use my phone, or like I don't have to. And they completely prevent me from picking. And it's working so far. So I just have to throw those on in times where I notice I start to pick or something like that. So it's been working so far. So anyways, this book, it's a very well-known book, I think, pretty popular. And like I said, it's very approachable, very easy read. And it has like all these different strategies that I can apply, because there's a lot of different types of habits, both good and bad, that take different approaches to either build or break. So it was pretty cool because it doesn't give you excuses where you're like, oh, that won't work for this. Like there's a way to build all kinds of habits and break all kinds of habits. So super good. I highly recommend. I really liked this book a lot. Like I said, look at all the bookmarks. But if you're looking to build better habits or understand the science of habits or break any bad habits, I highly recommend this book. Tiny changes, remarkable results. Okay. I'm gonna reorganize here for a second. Okay, next is Empire of the Vampire by Kristoff. This was a hefty book. I think this book took me 3 weeks to read, which is pretty long for me, honestly. It might have even been close to a month, honestly. This was such a big book, and the font was tiny too. Right off the bat, loved this book. I just just want to say that. It was so, so good. It is an extremely, extremely graphic vampire book. And it's basically about, I don't want to spoil anything, it's about a vampire hunter of sorts, and it's not Twilight vampires, okay? It's like, I think I said this in my video before, it reminds me of Castlevania mixed with The Witcher. That's the vibe that I get. Also, it has pictures for each of the characters, and there's a reason for that, but I won't explain that because I don't want to spoil anything. But really detailed pictures in the book, and I loved that. Sure, I love using my imagination, but I thought it was so, so cool to have pictures. I'm gonna try to find another one. In the book, because you just don't get that a lot with, like, oh, that one's inappropriate. With adult fiction books. I really like the art style too. So anyways, vampire book fiction, and it's a massive adventure, I will say that. I have read criticisms of the book that it's misogynistic. I just did not get that vibe. Sure, it calls with some women in the book like bad names, but I don't know. It just didn't feel misogynistic to me. But you know what? Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. But anyways, I'm not gonna delve into that because I don't feel that way. I loved this book. It was fun. It was dark. It was graphic. It was gory and violent, and I loved that. And it was like the most fun and refreshing vampire book I've read in so, so long. Or really just vampire content I've consumed in a long time. I like vampires when they're scary, not when they're romanticized. And so it was pretty cool. I really, really liked this book. And it was unique too because it's all fiction. It's like set in a world that I'm pretty sure is either not ours or it's like a world from a long time ago. And but they used like kind of modern language a little bit, and I thought that was fun. There's a word for that, and I can't remember what it is. But when there's modern things but in a different time, if you know what I'm talking about, please comment it below, because I know what it is and I can't remember right now. Also, I can't remember who recommended this book to me, but if you're watching, thank you. This was an excellent recommendation. I really like when you guys recommend books because I pretty much always add them to my Goodreads want to read list. So I feel like if you've been watching my book videos for a while, you know what books I'm interested in, so I trust your recommendations. I can't read fast enough, and my bank account has to chill sometimes in between ordering them, but I try to read the ones that you guys suggest. Okay, next is a classic. I have never read any of her books before, but it was Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None, which is, I believe, one of her most famous mysteries. I didn't care for this, and I think it's because it was written 100 years ago, honestly. I think it was written in 1930. Now, Agatha Christie is known as like the queen of mystery, right? It even says it right here. And fair, okay, but after living in modern day times, I've read a lot of like mystery and thrillers, so it doesn't hold up to that now, because I imagine that her stories were amazing 100 years ago, okay? Groundbreaking, new type of content, absolutely. But they're just not, I don't think it holds up now, and I also don't really care for reading really old books. I'm gonna be honest. Half the time I don't know what they're talking about because they're using terms and words and talking about things that don't exist anymore. And I'm not that smart to carry the knowledge of knowing what everything about time periods. Like, I'm not that smart, okay? Anyways, it was fine. It was a fine mystery novel for what it was, but I wasn't blown away by it by any means. There was just so much in it that was just, for lack of a better phrase, old-timey. So, I don't know. I don't doubt that she's was a great author. It's just, I feel like I needed to read an Agatha Christie to kind of like check that off my list of like mystery stuff. Also, there was a lot of really sexist stuff and racist stuff in it, so I know it was written 100 years ago, but still, not. We can move on. I will be donating this one. Next is Daring Greatly by Brené Brown, and it is How the Courage to be Vulnerable Transforms the Way We Live, Love, Parent, and Lead. This book was okay. I think I rated it like a 3 out of 5. Love Brené Brown. Brilliant psychologist, and I read Atlas of the Heart semi-recently this year, and it was amazing, so I was really excited to read another one of her books. Non-fiction, by the way. It's fine. I just don't feel like there was anything that interesting in this book. It just talked about being vulnerable and how that helps us be better people, better parents, better friends, better co-workers, bosses, And I think that could be really, really, this could be a really good book for somebody else, but not to be arrogant, but I just feel like I already knew everything in the book. Nothing was new to me. I'm kind of a vulnerable person. Everyone always, when they talk about me, they always say, oh, you're so honest, you're always just yourself all the time. And I think it's because I genuinely don't understand how people pretend to be somebody else. That's never made sense to me. I've always just been myself, no matter who the company is that I'm keeping. And that hasn't always been the greatest tactic to take when interacting. Sometimes I can be a lot for people because I'm very blunt. I think I'm kind, I'm just blunt. And I don't really have much of a filter. And I kind of just say what's on my mind all the time. And that can be a lot for people, and I get that. So anyways, I think I've always been a fairly vulnerable person. And I haven't been afraid to admit when something embarrassed me or made me feel shame, which I think is kind of like the cornerstone of this book, is shame resilience and talking about shame. Anyways, what I will say is that I do recommend this book because I do love Brené Brown. I think it has important information in it. But just for me, I just felt like there wasn't anything necessarily new or noteworthy. I think one little tiny sad bookmark. feels like, I mean, just in nonfiction in general, like unless you're writing about astrophysics, you know, make it approachable, make it digestible, because not everybody has multiple degrees. So, yeah, super good. Okay, and last but not least, I read this book. This was actually the last book that I read before I started reading the one I'm reading now. Sing, Unburied, Sing by Jesmyn Ward. I'm going to start off by saying I rated this a 4 out of 5, and there's a reason for that. First of all, this book is super good. I really liked it. It's a fiction book, and it dives into the history of Mississippi, for Black people specifically. And it's a fictional story, and it does have some fantastical elements. However, it does a very, very good job of providing situations and context around racial divide. And what's cool about this book, and very unique, is that it's a ghost story. It literally has ghosts. And I won't go too much into that because I don't want to spoil it. So it's a little creepy. This is a very dark book, I will say that. Not a happy book whatsoever. I mean, it talks about slavery. It talks about imprisonment of Black people in Mississippi. It talks about plantations. It spans over multiple generations of this family and kind of their history, and how the history of racial injustice spans throughout these generations. And I think this is a very important book. It's very good. The only reason that I rated it a 4 out of 5 and not a 5 out of 5 is that the way she writes took me a little bit of getting used to in the beginning. I was a little bit confused in the beginning of the book. The way she writes is very unique and contemporary, but it's good. I just had to get used to it. And I also kind of felt like there were some kind of gross parts, unnecessarily gross parts, but that's less of an issue for me. But anyways, this is a very good book. Very, very good. I will be suing for emotional damages. But it was good. But like I said, this is an extremely dark book, so if you're not in a mental space to read that, don't. But it is very educational. And I think that it really talks about some very important things. Also, that one of the main characters was not very likable, but it's good for sure. I don't know much about Mississippi, so it was interesting. He talks a lot about the Parchment Prison, and the Parchment Prison, I believe, is the only maximum security men's prison in Mississippi today, but it has a horrible history. It used to be a slave plantation, and so in this book it talks about the Parchment Prison today, and then as it was when it was a plantation. And so yeah, it's very dark, but it's very good. And I think that she's an author that I would continue to read stuff that she puts out, because after kind of getting used to the way that she writes, she has very important things to say. So anyways, so good. It also has like this really nice, like kind of textured matte cover, and it's just very satisfying to touch. It does bounce back and forth between the different characters' perspectives too, which I've grown to kind of like, honestly. So yeah, that is the last book that I have for you. Those were the books that I read over the summer of 2022. books, or if you want to read any of them, or just plan